Notts County Talk, another match preview. Games still coming thick and fast. Unsure if we'll have one on Saturday because I know a lot of the EFL games have been moved. But, we'll just have to take that one as it comes. But now we look ahead to Solihull Moors, Tuesday night. Never an easy place to go. If you remember last season, it's the one game you missed, wasn't it, George? That we went to every other game that we went to together. But that was a really, really tricky one. Last Sunday, it was a really good preview. We were joined by Richard, runs Notts County Stats for a real in-depth look. And again, we've got another treat because we're joined by him again. Richard, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks.
So we'll get straight in. We'll look at yesterday. Did you see that coming?
Which bit?
Yeah.
How? I don't know.
We'll start with the defeat.
Yeah, I mean, it was a difficult one. It's always going to be a difficult game, as we know. And to be honest, after we changed things up a bit, all right, we conceded that goal just before half time, which was unfortunate. But I do feel that the players at the time suddenly started to get into a bit of rhythm during the second half, and I do think we gave them a good run for the money second half. So it's all ifs and buts, but I do think that the time that Cal came on as well with Dion as well, it kind of really sort of livened us up a little bit more, and I think we could have gone on to win that game.
Yeah.
I really do, and it's just such a shame, what's happened with Cal. It's just unbelievable, really. You have to feel for the guy. But it's one of these situations where, as a club, do you have to be 100%, almost reliant on one player to get you where you need to be? And good players do influence results, and without a doubt, he's certainly a player that if we'd had fit and available all season, I honestly believe, as I'm sure everybody else would as well, that we'd be in a slightly better place than we are now.
Yeah, we put a tweet out, and it was just some still images from some highlights, and it was 4 still images, and in each image there's a minimum of 3 players surrounding Roberts.
Yeah.
3 of the images he goes on to score. The other one he lays it off to Enzio, who's not even in shot, and he's free and he scores. So massive.
That's what happens. Create space for other players, and again, it's just apart from the loss of him, possibly for the rest of the season, we don't know how bad it is. It didn't look particularly good. You've just got to feel for the guy. It must be really frustrating for him. So, but going back to the result, Hartlepool, you can't fault them really. Dave Challoner's got them playing really well. They're a good unit. You could see that first half. They're always dangerous. That their biggest downfall is that more recently they haven't probably scored as many goals as they could have. They always create a lot of chances, but don't necessarily score from them. And that was evident in the early part of the game. You could see they were creating a lot of chances, a lot of balls coming into the box, but actual attempts on goal were few and far between. But last time we spoke, we talked about teams, looking at the promotion side of things, and Hartlepool are one that are definitely going to be up there. They've played a lot more games, but they are on that sort of steady trajectory that we talked about, and I still see them probably mid to late 70s points wise, and that's probably not going to be enough for them to challenge for that automatic promotion place.
Yeah, George, we did the discussion yesterday, didn't we? And the beauty of the discussion and sort of the downside of the discussion is it's instantly from full time. So we say things on there, and it's
emotion, isn't it?
It is. And as the dust has settled, do you feel differently about yesterday's game? Because we did it even before we heard anything from Birchnell, because we had a lot to say about the Griffiths.
Definitely a little bit, because I think that substitution, I felt a bit angered by it, if I'm going to be honest. Like, I thought it was a little bit hasty. Like I said, it was like 9 minutes before half time, but the way Birchall explained it, he's put 3 up top to sort of cancel out their centre-backs coming forward, which, to be fair, they were doing. They were getting into the game a little bit, and our 2 strikers couldn't really hold them back or pin them back. So in that regard, when you think to like the latter stages of the first half, like the last couple of minutes, and then we come out in the second half, it did actually work. So in that respect, you've got to give him some credit. And thinking back and having time, like you say, for the dust to settle, it like you look back and think maybe the emotion of losing the game 2-0 and Cal Roberts going off with an injury and looking fairly distressed, they probably sway your viewpoint a little bit on things like that. But yeah, that's my opinion on that has changed. I think we're probably a little bit hard, won't we, on Birchnell, if we're going to be honest. I think he's only a few games in. I think we've just got to get behind him, and there's going to be a few anomalies in there result-wise. I mean, yesterday wasn't really an anomaly; it was quite unlucky, I think. Like you think of the chance Wharton had, where I think Griffiths put the cross right onto his head.
Yeah,
didn't he? It was a great header. If he just got it like that foot lower, we get the goal and the game's completely changed. So it's not like we got battered, and we were honest and said that. Like, it's not like we played bad. So I don't feel as disheartened now as I did yesterday after the game. But I think it's just the override of Cal's coming back and you're all excited, and then all of a sudden he's off after a few minutes of being on, and he looks visibly upset. We're down to 10 men, and it is frustrating, and it just seems. I think it's ever more frustrating now because it just seems to be the story of the season. Like when you think you're turning the corner, which we've talked about it a million times now on the channel, something just hinders it, and then it's sort of like, oh, there's another false dawn. But
yeah,
I just think for everyone now, we just got to sort of ride the wave a little bit. It's probably not going to be a flawless end to the season. Birchnell said it in his post-match yesterday. We probably are going to, we're not aiming for the first spot now. As it's out of our hands, which it is. So if we are going into the playoffs, we've just got to sort of back them and hope that we can sort of towards the last 4 or 5 games get a good run together. So we've got a good bit of momentum, and also hope that we get that 2nd or 3rd spot, so we have to play less games in the playoffs.
Yeah, we sat here with on the preview on Friday. We sat here. It's 48 hours ago with Adam Dunleavy, the Notts County Women's team's manager, and I remember saying to him after what we'd done with Wrexham and Woking, I remember saying, I'm happy for us to play this formation for the rest of the season. And 48 hours later, I'm not so happy. Richard, what do you make of the formation and how it went?
Well, going back to what George was saying when you were talking about the substitution, taking Griffiths off and bringing Knight on at the time that he did, when he did it, I thought he was doing the right thing, because everybody could see what was happening and something needed to be done. So I didn't have an issue with him making the substitute. It's unfortunate for young Griffiths, but I didn't have an issue with the manager making a decision at that point, because he's seen something he wants to change. It's in his hands, it's on his head. He's going to make the change. And I think he was brave and he did the right thing. Looking back now, the only thing I would say is I think he made the wrong change. Because personally, if that's what he was going to do, for the reason of pushing back their back 3, who were obviously pushing up on us and causing us a lot of problems, I think he should have brought Dion Kelly-Evans on for Griffiths, and then pushed Enzio up. And Enzio is the only player that was on that pitch at that time that is ever going to create anything for us going forwards.
Yeah, well, you can leave a comment in the live chat of our video before we actually go live, and this was left at 5 o'clock by Colin, who watches a lot of our shows. We've already had a quick look at it. But if you go into a battle and have a bazooka, you don't put it in your holster and use a water pistol. Yeah. We've already said we agree with this. He is such a dangerous player to be playing at wing back. It's unbelievable.
I think in that regard, though.
Sorry,
go on, Richard.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually asked on Twitter earlier, so I think I mentioned something about I can't remember the last time I really saw Enzio cutting in from the wing and having a good crack at goal, and you want to be seeing that from him at least 2-3 times a game, because more often than not, one of them's going to hit the back of the net. and that's been stifled. I think somebody mentioned that he did manage to get one off like that against Hornchurch, but we need to be seeing that on a regular basis. That's what he's capable of. He's a game changer. He's a game winner, and his whole style of play has been completely stifled.
Yeah, I agree.
Right back, wing back, and everything. It's just criminal, really. And so going back to the game and that substitution and everything, fully behind the manager when he made the change. Fully understand why he did it, but in hindsight, looking at it now, I do feel that he probably made the wrong change of personnel at that time.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think for me now, it's going to be interesting when Brindley comes back and if we stick to the same shape, because there's a couple of different avenues to explore there, isn't there? Like sort of alluding to pushing Enzio further up and then maybe putting Brindley in the position that Enzio has been playing, like right wing back, or even just changing to a 4-3-3. Because when we went to a 4-3-3 yesterday later on in the game, I thought we looked quite good. But then it's like, are we playing that good because we're 1-0 down and we're chasing a game? And are we going to come out the blocks playing like that at the start of a game? Because I think this season we haven't shown that we come out the blocks very well. So I think it's almost impossible for Bertrand. I think it's very hard to judge him at the moment because I think it's hard to know what to do for right or for wrong.
Sorry, Richard. Quickly, what I would say is I would like to see us switch, like you said, George, a 4-3-3 or get Enzio further up the pitch. And Roberts isn't going to be fit for a while. And say to Enzio, look, you go and be the match winner now. You're the player that can change games. Give him, I think he's a confidence player, and give him that confidence before the game and say to him, right, you've now got a license to go and get to the edge of the box and hit it and draw players towards you. Because if Enzio starts to be on form in a game, they're going to double up on him, even triple up like we've seen with Roberts. And all of a sudden, you've got more space for these players like Rodriguez possibly, or Knight or Knowles. And I think I want to see him further up the pitch and give him that license to be the main man.
No, absolutely. And, asking about the 3-5-2 as well, I'm not sure if that's, I could be wrong. When I look back on Ian Birchnell's career and information that's available that you can find online about his preferred style of play and his preferred formations and what have you, he's predominantly been a 4-3-3 attack-minded coach. But a great thing about the 4-3-3 is it works well as well if you want to go to that 4-2-3-1 that we saw working so well at the very, very early stages of the season, where you've got a Ruben at number 10, just behind Kyle, and then a couple of runners either side, whoever that might be, Enzio one side, Knight or Knowles the other side, even Sam. There are options there, and it does easily go from 4-2-3-1 to the 4-3-3, and I think he needs to decide how he wants his team to play, the formation he wants them to play, and stick with it and tell him this is what you're doing. This is how we're going to do it. You're professional footballers. Let's get on with it, and let's get out of this league, basically.
Well, in a logical sense, 4-2-3-1 suits the side we've got, I think. It just does. I can't see any other formation that suits not better. You've got creative players that can sit in behind, like you said, Ruben Rodriguez. Even Cal, when he was fit, could play in that. You've got the position for the wide players which Knowles can play there. You've got your striker up top of your Wootton. It suits us down to the ground. And for some reason, I feel like if we hadn't have gone away from that, and if the players had stuck to that, I don't know, it could have been a little bit different. But I'm just going to bring this in. So without a fox in the box, not so struggled to gain promotion, not replacing Dennis. Where's Thomas and Dennis, especially huge losses?
It's something we talk about all the time, and we've not really replaced that assured goal, have we? And like I said yesterday, Thomas was, he partnered Wootton very well, so Wootton's not really had that this season, and I think it's obviously shown. So in that regard, it's completely right. Like Dennis would come on some games. Well, majority of the games he came on, he scored, didn't he? He just sort of get a goal from nothing. I can't remember what game it was. I think it was the last game against Eastleigh, when Roberts sort of like he went further than you sort of wanted him to, and then he crosses the ball. It looks like he sort of shot, but then Dennis just gets on the end of it and nods it in. He just seemed to get on the end of everything, and we don't have that at the moment, I don't think.
But the thing with Dennis, it wasn't just that. It wasn't just his ability, in and around the box. He could score from 20, 25 yards just as easily. I'm trying to think back to which game it was at Meadow Lane last season, possibly.
Surely was it?
Torquay comes to mind, the one where he's not even looking at the goal, but he's about 20 yards out, and he does that.
Was it on his left?
Yeah,
I think it was Chorley.
From about 20 yards. Yeah. And that's what he gave you. It was certainly a different dimension. But again, I think that we've been unfortunate. It's happened for everybody, but we've been unfortunate with the COVID situation, with what's happened with us having to lose Wes the way we have, because as Andy has quite rightly said there, Wes is a big miss as well, because he was a big part of Kyle Wootton's game. They did play well off each other, and Kyle's missed that massively this season.
Yeah, I took a massive job on this morning whilst I was had a bit of spare time. I went back through all of our player ratings that we've given to work out an average of what we've given. And I'm not quite finished yet, and I'm only going to do it for players that have played a certain number of games. But Wes Thomas stuck out to me in that. I think Dover, he got the highest rating, despite it being poor. Was it Altrincham at home, where the ball is literally going out for a goal kick, and he does the most unbelievable bit of play to keep it in. He earns one of the highest ratings in that game. We then play like Summer Barnet, maybe, earns one of the highest ratings. And I'm not going to include him in the averages when I post it on Twitter, because actually he didn't play enough games in the end. But we did a ratings when Notts had about 2 weeks off from COVID, and we put where each player was so far for this season. And at that point, he was one of our contenders for player of the season.
Yeah.
One of my favourite Notts players in recent seasons, I think.
Yeah. He is. He's one of those that would just chase down every cause as well. I think last season he dragged us back into the game. Was it Halifax at home where we were behind and we were coming up to half time, and he literally ran for that ball and scored the goal.
Yeah, I remember that.
Clattered against the keeper, injured himself in doing it, but it got us back in the game.
Yeah.
And anybody else would have probably just thought, oh, the keeper's got that, and left it.
He's class.
I have missed a bit of that.
For me, he is the biggest. Sorry, go on then, George. He's the biggest miss.
Yeah. Now, sort of going back to the lineup though, one thing that's sort of on my mind a little bit, like me and Tom always do our lineups like every preview. I'd be interested to see like how you'd line up for this one, if you change the shape, and what personnel you'd go for.
Okay, yeah.
And see how it differs to mine and Tom's, because obviously we'll go on to later on in the video.
I'm going to put a comment on screen while you have a think of that. Ben, do you think Ruben is out of favour? Because in a lineup, he starts for me at the minute with a lack of
I think
goal scoring chances. He's got to start.
I think he probably is maybe out of favour for some reason, but I think all three of us probably like him.
Yeah,
I think he's a great player. I do.
Yeah, and he'd be in my 11 for the game as well. I think I would like to go back to a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 with a back four. Chickson's been doing okay at left back. His biggest problem is he's not going to be charging down that, doing the overlap and everything else as well that we're looking for from a player that maybe Barnet might be able to do for us. So it'd be a toss a coin over those two on the left side. Obviously, Dion back in on the right. At the moment, I know Alex Lace is looking like he's coming back to fitness, but I'd still stick with Rollo and Mark Ellis, in the centre of the back four there, and then you two in the 4-2-3-1 in the midfield. Obviously, at the moment, although I was not particularly complimentary of him on the last time I was on, Reeves is obviously going to be in there. And Doyle as well if he was fit, but he isn't. So, it's a toss-up between Jim O'Brien and Griffiths, and I think at the moment it'd be Jim for me. And then when you're looking at the front four, I'd like to see Sam given another go, maybe up on the left. Ruben tucked in behind Carl in that number 10 spot, and Enzio where he needs to be, upright. And just go for it.
Yeah, I think we've got a side that you can just say go and attack, and that's if we went and attack with the chains off. I think you're looking, if you just go out and attack, we'll outscore teams, and at the minute I'd rather outscore teams and get the wins. But yeah, it's interesting that you go back to that formation, because I think in my heart I'd go back to a 4-2-3-1 definitely. I think if I was picking a team, I'd do that definitely 100%. So we'll go on to Solihull. Just before that, I just want to take us back to last Sunday. I think all three of us predicted 1-0.
Yeah, really. Fair.
And I'm sure, Richard, you said there weren't many goals in this one.
Yeah.
And it ended up with 6. So hopefully we'll do better this week. So I'll give a very, very brief overview, and I'm sure you've got some stats in there. So Notts currently 5th on 52 points, Solihull 15th on 39 points. And quickly, the only thing that I'll add to it is, stood out to me, both played the same amount of games. And Solihull, despite being 10 places lower, have only conceded 6 more goals than Notts. So pretty good defensively. Pretty good. George, tough opposition?
Yeah, they always are, aren't they? They just seem to be such a rigid side, don't they? Really hard to break down. I remember last season, I think it was when we played them at home.
Worst game.
It was 0-0, and it was such a boring game because it was just constant efforts to try and break them down. And then it was it's a tough side to break down. They're obviously on a bit of a better run at the moment as well. So it's going to be a really tough game for Notts. And we've got to be really at it, I think, and sort of dust the Hartlepool loss off.
Yeah, Richard, what about their recent form then?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they hit a really bad run of form a dozen games ago or so. Went about 9 games without a win, and they had 4 games and a little bit more where they didn't even score. So they were in a really bad place for a while. But they sort the manager out. They've brought Mark Yates back in for James Shan, and that was beginning of March, and he's really turned it around for them. The last 4 games, won 3, drawn 1. The last one they drew was against Sutton, and they've not conceded a goal in those 4 games either. If you look at the last 6, they're exactly the same form as Notts, but with a slightly better goal difference than Notts. So, forget the league position. They've found a bit of form again, as usually seems to be the case when Notts are looking like they're going to play somebody who's been having a tough time. They end up finding a bit of form. But you're dead right. It's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy.
I don't want it to get to the point we said, didn't we, that teams would start to tail off, and Wrexham are one of those that look like they've started to tail off. I want it to get to the point where we're not looking over our shoulders just to be in the playoffs now. I think we've got 5 points on Wrexham, who are just outside the playoffs. For me, every point now, because suddenly, yes, we're slipping away from that first place spot and it looks very unlikely, but all of a sudden, if we start to panic, looking over our shoulder at are we even going to make the playoffs, it could make for a very poor, difficult, unwatchable end of the season, because at the very if we don't finish playoffs, it's an absolute disaster. Disaster.
Yeah. And I think you're right, but I think he needs to now set his side up, set his teams up to guarantee that we're in the playoff mix. Obviously, if we're going to be in the playoff mix, we want to be in that, second or third place, because you've got the advantage then of playing 1 less game. But, he's just got to think, okay, we'll go for it. We've got to aim to make sure, we've got to build to make sure that we're strong going into those playoffs. So we've got 12 qualifying matches, if you like, before a big tournament. That is essentially what we've got, and we need to build and build and build and build, so that we hit the ground at playoff time with the right kind of momentum. to see us through, because for us to get promoted via the playoffs, we will have to beat a Hartlepool or a Stockport or a Sutton United to get promoted, or a Torquay. You know, we will have to face one or more of those teams at some point during the playoffs and beat them. So we've got to be in a really good place when we hit those playoffs. I don't see us challenging for the title now. I just don't think we will. And that's why I think he needs to really focus on how he sets up for those playoffs and make sure that he's got 12 games now to get enough points to make sure we're as high as possible and that we're in a really good place when those playoffs kick off. And I think that's what we've got to do.
Yep.
George, out of that playoff mix, we know that we've beaten Stockport twice in 2 different competitions. We've drawn with Torquay, we yet to play them with beat Sutton. Who scares you most out of that playoff mix if it is looking like we are going to be in there?
Probably Hartlepool, because we've not got a very good return on them, have we, this season? But I think at the moment, all of them do. I think if we were to face any of the teams in the playoffs at the moment, I think we'd really struggle. That's why I think, like me and Richard have said, the momentum towards the end of the season is going to be pivotal for us if we get the playoff spot. Because you sort of have that sort of, it's even like as a fan, you have that belief. Like, we won 2 games on the bounce and we're all thinking Notts are going to beat Hartlepool and it's going to be the big turning point of the season. So imagine what it's going to do for the players if we have a really good last 3 or 4 games. They're going to have that belief, and I think that helps massively. The psychological effects have showed ever more this season. So I just, all of the teams at the moment. But if we hit that good run of form, I mean, I feel like we can beat anyone on our day.
My problem with the playoffs is, and I've said it before, is that if we don't finish in the top, the second or third spot, we play 3 games. Now, I could fully see if we finished in that second, I could fully see Notts winning 2 games. I'm right, isn't it? If we finish second or third, it's 2 games to win. I could fully see Notts doing that. But even though it's 1 extra game, I can see no way at the minute Notts win 3 games against, like you said, Richard, maybe it could possibly be we have to beat Chesterfield, Stockport and Hartlepool. I can't see on current form, there's no way just that extra game, it would be too much for us, I think.
But we're in a good place at the moment for Ian Birchnell and Morris to really think about how they approach that now. We've got 12 games to build that momentum and be exactly where we need to be to get us through those 2 or 3 games to get us promoted. You know, we're probably in a better position than those clubs that we're worrying about above us, because they've all got aspirations of thinking they're still going to win the title, and they could get carried away with that without actually planning and thinking about a strategy for the playoffs, you know. So
you see, don't you? You see with some teams that, like, say it goes right to the wire with Hartlepool and Sutton, and it goes to the last day, and I don't know, for example, Sutton are about to give up the title to Hartlepool, and all of a sudden Sutton get a winning goal and Hartlepool then are in the playoffs. Their mentality could be gone for the whole playoff run, couldn't it? So
and you know, Hartlepool, they were obviously better than us for large parts of that first half at the weekend, but yesterday. But second half, they didn't look that good again. You know, we matched them in most areas of the pitch, and it was only the unfortunate situation with us losing Cal, going down to 10 men, and then obviously they've got that extra space. That they were fortunate with that, you know, being able to get the second goal from a set piece again. But you know, to get that second goal. So, you know, without a doubt, if Cal had stayed on, I think we could have. And I know this sounds like pie in the sky, but I think we could have gone on to win the game because we had the momentum. So, I mean, Hartlepool, they've done us now last few games and what have you. They seem a bit of a bogey team for us down here, but they wouldn't worry me too much in the playoffs. I think one team that does is Stockport, and I've been saying Stockport for a while, and they're creating chances for fun at the moment. And and they're winning games, and they're winning games convincingly. And I know that we've beaten them twice this season, but yeah, they're a team that I would worry about having to play.
Well, I know it's in the. Go on, George.
I think as something to sort of remember as well, which I think we're probably forgetting because we haven't been able to go to games this season, is if you do get in the playoffs, fans will probably be there, all being well. But in saying that, you look at the clubs that are in and around the playoffs. You've got us, you've got Torquay, you've got Hartlepool, and like let's say Wrexham get in, Chesterfield. They're all clubs that have big followings. So like it could be like it's going to be massive, isn't it? And I think especially for Notts, I can't really talk for other teams because I'm not really sure how that effect works, but I do think if fans were in for the playoffs, we would see a difference.
Yeah.
Imagine if the first game where fans properly come back in numbers is the playoffs and Notts get that home tie. Imagine the buzz the players are going to get walking out. The other team won't get that buzz. They won't get the same buzz.
If that happens, I'll be there about 9 a.m. waiting to get in. I'll be so excited.
I think there's a chance we could have fans at the last game of the season. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Weymouth at home.
Weymouth, yeah.
So
that could be good. So
fans 100% make a difference. Richard, before we let you go, we're gonna have to ask for another prediction.
Really?
Nah.
Goals.
Yeah, there's going to be loads of goals in this one.
0-0.
No, I'm going for a 2-0 Notts. I'm going for a 2-0 Notts. I think we did them 2-0 at our place. Carl got a couple. I think he's going to score again because he's due one now. He's not scored for a few games in the league for sure. And Enzio's going to be playing in a more advanced role and is going to score a screamer.
Imagine.
Here first.
if that happens, if Enzio plays more advanced, I agree with you. I can see a 2-0. I definitely can. Definitely can. But Richard, thank you for joining us again. Really, really appreciate it. I know the people watching really enjoy as well. So hopefully we get that 2-0 win.
Yeah.
Cheers. Time, Richard.
Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.
Right, George.
Let's go.
Our lineup now. We've been saying throughout the video that we think we want to go more 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. Now, when we do this lineup, it's a mixture of what we want to see, but also what we think we'll see. So we've gone with the 3-5-2, and we're not saying it's a 5 at the back at all. We're saying go and attack with a 3-5-2. So the two wing backs aren't wing backs; they're wingers. George, talk us through it.
Slocum. I'm not going to expand. Rawlinson and Ellis and Lacey. I think we keep it the same. Well, we're not keeping it the same, are we? Because the Chickson's out. No, I think it'd be good to see Lacey back. I think he just gives that little bit more firmness at the back. And I feel like it could assure Rawlinson a little bit because he has played so much football with him. And when we have seen Rawlinson and Lacey together, they have been really like a really good pairing. So I really enjoy seeing them again playing together, albeit a back three, which probably isn't ideal. But you can't leave Ellis out, can you? He's been great since he's come in. So on the rightful wing back, even
don't you dare say wing back.
Oh, winger.
We're not having him as a wing back.
Yeah. So yeah, three at the back then. Enzio is a winger, like Tom's expanded on there. We want to see him higher. We've seen how it works for Hartlepool, just having them three centre backs, and it can sort of use this, not the same tactics, but similar, where we're sort of pushing up the pitches, which I think is the style of football we have been seeing. Could be interesting. And yeah, we've sort of agreed there with Richard in saying we want to see Rodriguez back and be playing that sort of number 10, but obviously behind him we'd have Reeves and O'Brien. Not left Griffiths out for any reason, but by the same token, I can see him playing just to sort of give him that sort of shove to say it was a tactical change. It wasn't anything to do.
He'll probably play over Rodriguez, won't he?
Yeah, he probably will, but we want to see Rodriguez, don't we? That's sort of our input to it. And then Miller on the left wing. Do you want to go to the strikers, Tom?
Yeah, Wootton and Knowles. I mean, Wootton, Richard said it as well, due a goal. He is massively due a goal.
So is Knowles.
Oh, you got a hat trick. Were you asleep for that one? Yeah, he wasn't fantastic against Hartlepool, but who was fantastic. Yeah, I just don't think at this point in the season, when things are so important, I don't think he'll leave Wootton out. I don't think Wootton's been amazing, but he can just get you that goal, and he's massively overdue one. So I don't think he scored since his Kings Lynn double, and he missed a sitter against Hornchurch, where he actually had pretty much an open goal, just had to lift it. So we're going Wootton and Knowles. We think that lineup is sort of a mixture of what we want to see and what we will see. I would love it, absolutely love it, if that team news comes out at 6 o'clock. Remember, it's a 7 o'clock kickoff. It's been moved forward. If that team news comes out and all of a sudden it's 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, and imprint that 12 games, plenty to get that 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 tight, because I worry about us going to the playoffs with a 3-5-2. I really do.
Yeah, I do as well. Massively.
I went my prediction first last time, so we'll go with yours. George, high scoring affair.
Goalless affair. I've gone 4-0. I think Solihull, like we've alluded to, on a good run. We're a little bit up and down. Well, we have been all season. I just think we're going to see a bit more of let's say a firm performance from Notts. I think it's going to be one of those affairs where I think it's going to be a little bit boring. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope we do win 2-0, like Richard said. But at this moment in time, I think 0-0 Notts is probably going to be the outcome.
I've just changed mine at the last second. And I'm going Solihull 0, Notts 1. I had it down as a 1-1, but I think to myself, no, I'm optimistic. I'm going Rodriguez. I'm desperate to see him play. I'm desperate to see him score. I'm desperate to see his input. I feel for him. He's coming to the country at a time where it's so difficult, and he's just started to get in the side, and all of a sudden he's found himself out of favour. I think Solihull, I'm a big believer in. I love to play teams that are on good runs. Like, it's strange as it sounds. I always think it's got to come to an end. I said the same with Hartlepool, and if things had gone a little bit differently, it could easily have been different. But with Solihull, they're not as good as Hartlepool. They're not conceded in 4. Look at me now. There is no way they're not conceding in 5. And bookmark this, do whatever you want. There's no way that Solihull are not conceding in 5. So I think Notts are scoring, and I think it's typical Notts, isn't it? Just coming off the back of such a disappointing thing to go and get a win.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope you're right.
Yeah, so remember, it's a 7 o'clock kickoff. It's been brought forward. Really tricky one, as Solihull always is. But as always, thank you for your involvement in the comment section. It's been really interesting to read some of your points about different things. And we've had Richard again from Notts County Stats on Twitter. Really interesting input from him. Our videos will be out, instant reaction and player ratings for hopefully a victory away to Solihull.